Okay, everyone. I think we're all learning about new platforms today, which is a really exciting part about the creative process that we're going through. But I believe we're starting. So I am Megan, and I've had the pleasure with working with this amazing team on circular design. So we just wanted to give a quick introduction. And I am currently a master's student at the Nicholas School of the Environment at Duke University. And part of the reason why I think I have been involved in this and have the pleasure of giving this introduction today is because I represent a pretty large part of the population that isn't extremely familiar with circular design and circular economies. And it's really something that we are hoping to foster discussions around more. Circular economies represents this revolutionary way of looking at a system and using creative thinking to identify opportunities to change the way that we extract and use and dispose, and try to mimic nature by giving resources new lives and becoming more connected to these processes. So today we're going to work through a material flow analysis and design sprint using real data, so we can all learn a bit more about what it means to look at a system and practice identifying ways we can apply circularity. And what is so exciting is that we don't need to be experts. Our diverse perspectives are really exactly what we need to develop creative solutions. So the main hope is that we all walk away with a better understanding of the concept and the opportunities that exist to change the way that we use resources and operate, so we can begin to think about systems more circularly.
Great, thanks, Megan. So just by way of introducing myself, my name is Susan, and as you can see, I'm Irish. And I have just finished a grad dip here in Ireland in design and systems thinking for sustainability. And it's been a really, really interesting course. Eye-opening, and for me, one of the real key takeaways from today is, and it's really interesting the way Mike has set up this design sprint today that we'll be looking at. First of all, just a reminder that today is the second part of this design sprint. The first part took place in April, on April 10th, and on that date, the participants analyzed the supply chains, and they looked at the key stakeholders. They did empathy mapping, and through that they were able to identify the main pain points. And so that's where they stopped. And then today our participants, some of them were here on the 10th of April, but quite a few of them are new. And as Megan said, they're just ordinary people like you and me. Some know a little bit, some know nothing, but we all eat and we all use electronic devices. So we all have a responsibility in this area, and we really need to learn how to take the initiative and do what we can. Now, as part of that, this is for everybody. It is an interactive webinar, and I'm going to ask you two questions. I'd like you to pop your answers into the chat box. Don't be shy. You can be anonymous if you wish. My first question is, how old is the device that you're working on? If you're on your laptop, your mobile, how are you accessing this webinar? Please put in how old the device is, hopefully more than 2 years old. Sebastian will explain why that's important. And as well, I'd like you to put in the last thing that you ate today. Was it breakfast? Was it lunch? What did you eat? And perhaps you could put in as well if there was any waste from that meal or that snack. Just to get us into this space of thinking about food and thinking about the devices we use. the really cool thing about the sprint today is the way we might normally look at one system, but we're looking at both. And it's how these two systems interact. So as our sprinters navigate their way through their design tasks, you can see we have two streams. One stream is working through the data center stream, and the other team are working through the food waste system. As they come down, they're looking for solutions which can leverage maximum impact. It has to be actionable, it has to be doable. But they need to go wide again, even if they're working on the data center side, they need to have a think about, well, how might that solution affect the people or the stakeholders in the food system supply? So this is really the essence of design thinking and circularity. It's about being able to hold these large, complex supply chains in our mind while we look for kind of clear, actionable solutions. Now, a very important part of design thinking is empathy. And empathy was done looking at the stakeholders in the first session. And this time we thought we would do, oh, I see that tofu with carrots, no waste. Very good, Agatha. And we thought it would be interesting to take 3 elements of our supply chains and do a little bit of empathy for each one. So Mike now is going to take you through our first empathy map, and this one is related to the data center stream. So when you're ready, Mike, you can take us through your empathy map.
Okay, well then, thank you very much. Let me go ahead and concentrate and see if I can make it a little bit bigger. Try to be dexterous here and explain exactly what's going on the screen. So for those of you who are not familiar with this concept of an empathy map, the idea is that we're able to better understand the condition of those individuals that we're trying to establish their needs with. So in this particular case, the exercise that was performed on the 10th of April was looking at various personas, what we call a persona, different stakeholders or actors is another term that we use quite often, to understand what are they actually trying to accomplish, what are their pain points. And there's a specific exercise, the empathy map, that we'll be using today that allows you to get a little bit closer in understanding those needs. And then after I come up with the description, I have a little bit of a surprise for you, but one thing after another, and I understand this is very small, so I apologize for that. Let me see if I can zoom a little bit more into the different categories. So first we start in looking to see what that individual is actually thinking. So what is the thought process? What is actually going through their mind? Once we've gone ahead and passed the thinking process, we move on to the feeling. So how are they feeling about it? And it's all tied to a certain condition that they're afflicted with, a problem that they're trying to solve, whatever. Then we get to the C part, which is actually looking at the influencers. Who's actually influencing our persona tied to the problem in question? And then lastly, how do they deal with it? What is the doing part? How do they actually get around with these tasks? So as I mentioned, we have, and I'm going to have to share something else, and I apologize for all the switching around, but this one's very, very important, because if I'm not able to show the picture, then it's not going to have as much of an effect. So you can now see, let me go ahead and remove that. I'm going to put this as a full screen. We are currently looking at a mountain in Austria, and it's in a town called Eisenerz. And Eisen is the German word for iron. So what they do is they go ahead and retrieve iron from this area. And as you can see, this is not the natural state. This is not the natural state of this area. And I thought that this was a perfect specimen to go ahead and perform an empathy map. So what I'm going to do is try this exercise. Think, feel, see, do, trying to describe that of what you see on your screen. And I'm freestyling, so I make no promises whatsoever on what the actual results are going to be. But I think that's usually the more interesting things in life. So I'm going to go ahead and start with thinking. We're playing Marie Antoinette one more time. It's Off With My Head. All they keep doing is chopping things from the top of my head. And I don't think they quite understand what this actually means for me. It's not like I can grow another head. And they keep digging deeper and deeper. And this is a major problem. But it's even worse than that. I need to support various habitats. And those human beings are making it more and more difficult for me constantly, as I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to protect all these living things that are to be found within my mountain. Influencers. You might not see this, but I have living beings still within my entity. And I hold a responsibility to make sure that they survive, even if those human beings cannot see what is actually taking place within my glorious mountain. So how do I actually deal with this? I came up with an interesting device. I'm going to call this one an alpine corset. And it might seem a little bit funny because I need to figure out ways to kind of buckle up, because you can see as they keep digging at me, that is the only way that I can keep everything intact, because otherwise I'm going to be flying all over the place, and then there's going to be anything of me left. And furthermore, it's not just me. I hold a responsibility to make sure that everything that falls within my power stays intact. And of course, let's not even talk about the influences that I have by the climate, by the simple things like weather. We don't need to use complicated terms. We could stay with simple terms. Yeah, I'm influenced by the weather. I'm influenced by the seasons. And I'm afraid these human beings don't really think about these things. Okay, so that was my attempt to go ahead and describe an inanimate object, which would be the mountain. And I'm running across another inanimate object as somebody banging in the room next door. Apologies for that. And so I'm hoping that I was able to go ahead and transfer to you this feeling that after I've gone ahead and described the mountain, that you would look at this mountain from a different perspective. And that's the whole objective. So let's go ahead and close the loop. Let's go back to the Miro board. 1 second, please. And so, oops. And you could tell this is all live because you don't make these mistakes on purpose. In any case, this will give you an idea of the exercise that was performed on the 10th of April and what our illustrious designers are currently doing right now. And with that, I would like to go ahead and bring Megan and Susan back to the stage. And I see that we have somebody. Let me make sure. Yeah, I got it right. We have somebody from the design sprint who is actually here, and I believe he would like to go ahead and report on what's taking place. So Clemens, thank you very much. And I'm going to eliminate the sound by removing myself from this live stream temporarily. And I leave this all to you.
Thank you for calling me in. I just came from the field. It's crazy. The sprinters are running. And yeah, as we can see, Mike, if you go a bit down, we can already see how much progress we have in both of the streams. I'm coming from the data center stream. Lena, my colleague, is working on the food waste stream with the group. And on the data center stream, we already have some pain points that we discussed and heavily went through to describe them. And we sprinted further and further and even have already solutions that we came up with. And now we are at the point in describing those. We went the far way. We chose two different personas, the application user and the water management system. There, from the last design sprint, we chose pain points that we can discuss and found solutions on each of them. We rated them and then coming now to describe the solutions finally. Further, we will take it on in task 3 and 4 to link the solutions and place it on the map. This is still an upcoming challenge. The run is not over for us, but we hope it's not gonna take ages, but we still manage it. I mean, it's a sprint in the end, so it's not a marathon, but yeah. So I hope this was nice to hear from the field. I don't know, but we keep on running, and soon we're gonna report when we are finished.
Clemens, excuse me. So you said you picked 2 of the personas to work through, and I know on each of the personas there are a number of pain points. So did you look at all of the pain points for the 2 personas, or did you quickly hone in on 2 or 3? How did you decide which pain points to bring forward through the sprint?
We had a lot of discussions about the pain points. We went through all of them. There are 9 pain points by the application user that were defined by the design sprint that we had already in April. And the discussion went on, and we finally chose 5 of these. It was inefficiency of the application user, technical problems causing a breakdown, and data security as well. The focus on data security is like rising lately. Also, the cost of freemium and to go to the premium versions. And then from the persona of the water management, the water waste and pollution that we chose there, where many nice solutions could be found. Because we went on then to define the solutions better, like to define solutions for these pain points and define it better even. And regarding the water management system, I really liked the solutions they came up here. It's in like the heat exchangers of data centers. They kind of should avoid mixing eventually polluted water, the coolant in the end, with the environment. Mm-hmm. So like a very technical in the end solution, very, very high level, I would say. And I'm eager to see what the sprinting team is making out of this in the end, because we are still in the verge of describing it.
And can you give us a little hint as to a little description of the solution you're working on, or do you want to tell us later?
I'm gonna tell you later because we're still working on it, and I think I'm gonna, don't water like. I'm gonna tell later.
I just have one other quick question, Clemens, because yes. I think it's important that we understand that we all have agency. Do you know the background of any of your sprinters, what they do, or are any of them experts in the area, or are they,
Yes, we actually have one who is developed and thought already in the past he went a long way of learning about all these things. He has a very detailed view on it, but in the end, all of our participants are mostly not coming from actually the data center field. And this is as well the advantage, because they are thinking in a different way. And that's what I like as well so much about these solutions, that they are coming not from a super technical perspective normally, and that they are doable. So we simply can do it, and we can,
That's fantastic. I think you've really shown the strength of exactly how a design sprint works. It's the bringing that diverse view, different nationalities, different ages, backgrounds. I think that's fantastic, Clemens.
Yes, I mean, we have participants of all over the world. They're all thinking of the same problems, of the same pain points, and trying to make solutions of their own background, because everybody has a different background and everybody's bringing different views in. And I love the solutions already, what they brought up, and all the diversity in the discussions.
Fantastic. Thank you. We'll let you get back to looking after your sprinters. It sounds like you're doing a great job over there.
Yes, thank you. I think already a different interview is coming up, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm going down to the field again and trying to,
Thanks a million, Clemens. So thank you. Oh, here we go. Here's Sebastian. So I'd just like to welcome and quickly introduce Sebastian Hallström. Sebastian is the circular strategy lead at a company called Inrego. He'll tell you a little bit about that in a moment, but basically they look after and manage recycling e-waste, and it's a great initiative. And also you're a member of CradleNet Sweden, so I don't know whether you'd like to bring some of your insight from that. So Sebastian, my first question is just what's your reaction to what Clemens has said there about, how the sprinters are getting on working through the data center side of the sprint?
Well, I'm really happy to be here, and I think it's great seeing all that passion and a lot of people from diverse backgrounds working together to solve a problem. So I think it gives me a lot of energy to see this sprint and the work on the sprint. A few things, they touched on a few key points such as data security, which is a really important question in regards to even be working with this. So I think they're on a good way, and I'm looking forward to see what they come up with for kind of solutions.
Yes, very good. And so say data centers, I just, even just this morning, I was reading about a situation in Ireland, and even though we're quite a small population, less than 5 million, we currently have just under 100 data centers which are operating, under construction, or planning permission has been granted for these. And it's the issue about powering these. The estimates are that the government is saying that they'll be run on renewables, but the fact is, with the growth rate and demand for demand centers, they're saying that by 2030, that our data centers will be gobbling up at least 70% of the potentially available renewable energy by that date, 2030. And I'm just wondering about how you manage energy systems with the data centers in Sweden, or if there's a solution to that, or I don't know.
Yeah,
So,
it is a good question, and I think the way we work in Sweden with that is that we have another kind of situation where we have a lot of abundance of renewable energy, especially in the north of Sweden. So we have a lot of the data centers actually being put there, and in the north of Sweden, it's also cooler climate, which have a natural cooling on these servers. So we have a few solutions put in place for that, and connecting to what we are doing at Inrego, our business model is actually fixing these data centers, the computers that you're using right now, or the smartphone that you have, to fix what we already put in place and use that once again. And I really liked how Mike really talked on behalf of the mountain. We need more people speaking on behalf of the environment, because we're really extracting a lot of natural resources in a way in which it's not sustainable. And if you look on computers, smartphones, tablets, screens, monitors, there almost all the emissions, about 80%, is actually from the production phase. And there's only a small portion in which comes from the use phase. But when we look at servers, it's a completely other situation. There we have a smaller portion from the production and a large from the use phase. So I think, as you're pointing out, when we're talking about these data centers, the kind of energy that we put in is vital.
Megan, is there anything you'd like to ask at this point?
I think it all sounds great. I'm good.
Okay, so Sebastian, because a lot of people here, as Megan said at the beginning, we're not we're moving towards circularity, but it really is poorly understood. So say, for example, devices, I know there's roughly a time, not a time limit, but we'd say if you hold on to your smartphone for this period of time, you've kind of counteracted the production phase, and then everything after that is a bonus. So would you like to share some of those dates with us? How long should we be keeping all our devices, in operating?
Yeah, I think we really need to make different calculations for all the products. And for data centers, I think there is especially a need for doing the calculation to get the CO2 emissions right because of the high energy use. But if we talk about laptops, monitors, phones, computers, it's always use them for as long as possible. The energy efficiency increase will not make up for the emissions in the production phase. And there's been studies done on this. And if you buy, for example, a new computer to make up for the energy consumption of your old one, you will have to use that for decades. And we don't have computers working for decades right now. And there are many solutions in place already. And what I think is great with electronics is that it's a high value, which means that you can actually put labor into repairing those. And as you asked a good question, how old computer are you sitting at? And I think we'll need to ask ourselves this question. And what does our computer do to the mountain that Mike was speaking to? What does our computers do in the production phase? And one single computer actually stands for 280 kilos of carbon emissions just in the production. And then we also have, for every single computer, I guess everyone are sitting at a laptop. That laptop created 1,200 kilos of waste, even before it's reached to the consumer. So we really need to rethink our whole economy, use things for longer. And for electronics, it's possible to do that already today.
That's a really shocking figure. I didn't know 1,000. Did you say 1,200 kilos for one laptop? Okay, that nearly makes my heart stop. That's quite frightening. And so just perhaps on our usage. So data centers it's not just, I don't think people are aware of their digital carbon footprints. So perhaps could you just give us one or two things that we can do now, today, and start doing them every day and tell people the little things we can do to reduce our digital carbon footprints?
Yeah, there's some challenges there. And there's some things that you can do as users, but also the companies need to change this. We saw Netflix going a week ago that they will actually become carbon neutral. So we need big companies pledging this and going into this direction, making it easy for consumers not having to think about this. And I would say use the electronics you have for as long as possible. Think about how your consumption patterns and how that affects, if it's the energy and where's the energy produced. And I think the energy production is really tricky because you don't know that as a consumer. So I think the best way as a consumer is to use your products for as long as possible. And then we talk about data centers. We're seeing these completely different business models. Earlier, every single company had their own kind of IT structure where they had their own servers. We're now moving towards a cloud-based in which you put all of these into one place. And doing that, it's easier having, for example, products as service, and we can really collect all the used data centers and reuse them once again.
Great. Thanks a million, Sebastian. We'll bring you back towards the end just to do a wrap up with the three panelists. And for now, we're going to move on to our second empathy. And Megan is going to bring us through another important stakeholder in these two supply chains. It's actually the most important one, really. It's the linchpin between the two systems.
Absolutely. So in order to continue practicing putting ourselves in a position and extending empathy towards stakeholders that are involved in the process, and especially non-human stakeholders so we can begin to think about systems in an even more creative way, we are going to perform an empathy map exercise on rivers. A river is an entity that is impacted by both food systems and data center systems. So if we're moving through these steps that we talked about in our empathy map, we're beginning with feeling, and we are looking at how the stakeholder is feeling. So we think the river is frustrated and mad and sad and confused. If I'm a river and I feel I'm being choked out by this algae that's running rampant from nitrogen overloads from agricultural fields and waste being dumped into the river and water polluted from cooling systems, and I have less water in my flow because it's being removed to water fields and to cool systems. And we think about tasks, the tasks that I am trying to carry out as a river is to just provide an environment for the organisms in this river and in my riverbed. I'm trying to bring water downstream. I'm trying to stay clean and healthy and full, to hydrate the soil, hydrate plants, hydrate organisms, and transport nutrients. The influences that I have are the pollutants that are running into my river, the organisms that are taking from me, the organisms that purify the river, that maybe their survival is being impacted, the soil that shapes my river. And my overall goal is ultimately, as a river, to just foster life, which I think is why I feel so sad and confused that all I want to do as a river is give, and I'm confused as to why it's not reciprocated. And I think that touches on these pain points. My ultimate hope is to just be full and healthy and flowing and continue to give. I don't like to lose volume. I don't like to lose health and to lose my ability to do what I'm supposed to do as a river.
That was beautiful, Megan. So I think soon we should hear from Leanne, who is looking after the food stream design sprint. Or perhaps Mike, Mike, can you let us know if Leanne is ready to pop in and share how her side of the design sprint is going? Okay, so this seems to be an issue. It is a little bit difficult for Leanne and Clemens, who are looking after the design sprints. They're on a different platform. They're on Zoom. It's a little difficult for them to transition into the live stream. So I think then we may directly go to our next two panelists, and we'll bring Leanne in then after we've spoken to Frank Franciosi and Charlie Costello. So Megan, perhaps would you like to bring Charlie and Frank through a few questions around regenerative farm practices and composting?
Absolutely. I think it would be awesome if you guys could both just start by introducing yourselves and what you do and how it sort of plays into the exercises we're going through today.
Yeah, I'll
Frank, we'll start with you. Great.
Yeah. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Frank Franciosi. I'm the executive director of the U.S. Composting Council, which is a trade organization here in the States. I'm also the executive director of our foundation as well. And I think, composting is circular in nature. We're completing the carbon cycle, we're completing the water cycle, we're completing the nitrogen cycle. So, what we need to do is change the linear way of how we're handling food waste and that whole supply chain, the packaging side, the way we grow things, the fertilizers that we use to grow things, and we need to close the loop, and we need to put the organics back in the soil where it belongs, so we can make that river and that mountain happy, and we could regenerate that mountain and that river.
Thanks,
sounds-
Frank. That's great. Sorry, go ahead, Charlie. Thank you.
No problem. I really like what Frank said because he kind of hits on what buildbackbetter.farm is trying to do. You know, we thought about what's the greatest common factor that would solve real world problems, and it's pretty much the carbon cycle. And what Frank said about compost, you know, we're trying to create multiple revenue streams for farmers in the future. And one of those would be composting and worm castings and things like that. And, you know, at buildbackbetter.farm, we're trying to empower the carbon cycle, using it to incentivize individuals, communities, small and large scale farmers and corporations to grow ourselves out of multiple crises. It's basically the ultimate circular design, the carbon cycle.
Absolutely. The more that I learn about both of these all of these processes, it seems like it's a no-brainer. And so I'm wondering if you guys could both speak to some of the largest struggles that you've had in completing this, completing the carbon cycle and completing these cycles and implementing circularity into how we grow and use and consume food. And then where some opportunities you have both found in creating change.
Yeah, I'll start again. I think that some of the big issues that we've had here in the United States have, you know, been roadblocks around just not having enough infrastructure, compost manufacturing infrastructure in place, where we can take materials and compost them. As you know, the waste stream is about 30 to 35% compostable. That starts with food, but also the packaging that goes along with it as well. So I think that's it's just something that we need to kind of just change the way we think. And some of the other obstacles are obviously around funding these facilities, getting them up and running, and also just trying to get the general public to start looking at source separation. It starts with the consumer, what they buy, how they buy it when they go to the grocery store. You know, I mean, a banana comes in its perfect package. You don't need to put it in a plastic bag and take it home. So that's been a very big struggle. And then some of the other obstacles are just, you know, education and learning, getting municipalities to think differently and carving out an organics plan for their individual, either state or county or individual city, where there's these facilities can exist. Permitting is a big issue, state permitting. So as the council, we're here to try to overcome those obstacles by creating model legislation for states to adopt, creating ways to try to get funding in place, going, you know, to the Hill and asking for a national funding plan. Hopefully that'll happen in the next week or two. And just changing the way people think, I think, has been the biggest challenge that we have.
Thanks, Frank. I really agree with you. You know, one example of a state that is doing things the right way, in my opinion, is the entire state of Vermont. They instituted a law that said everyone has to compost kitchen scraps. Everybody has a little container in their kitchen, and it's a law, and it's creating multiple revenue streams for farmers. For example, there's a farm in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont called buildbackbetter.farm, and they're using composting and worms and chickens and basically creating their own carbon cycle inside their organization to create multiple revenue streams. And I'm really excited about that as an example, and I hope other states, other counties, other communities, you know, we're trying to design a carbon cycle solution for individuals and communities, and that's kind of composting in some ways, at least at the beginning of that cycle.
Wow, this is great. And I know I'm just looking through the comments right now that there are people that are interested. And so I would like to field a comment and turn it into a sort of broader question to both of you to round out our interview, which is just, the question is, are there composters that can be placed inside the house? And I would say, to expand upon that, Is there anything that you guys would like to leave with the audience that can maybe provide an avenue for people to become more involved if they wanted to learn more about how they can contribute to moving food systems into a more circular system?
Yeah, I'll start again. Bringing a compost bin inside your house is not a great idea. However, vermicomposting can be done inside. If you live in a high density area and you want to compost your food scraps, there's usually a lot of other alternatives. There's services that will come and pick up your pail of food scraps. Sometimes they'll drop off a pail of compost, or you can donate that compost to a community garden. Community gardens will also, on a community level, take in some food scrap. There's a lot of drop-off centers now around different cities, really all over the world, that where you can drop off materials and it's brought to a centralized composting facility. And there's farms that you can bring them to too. So again, closing that loop, what makes sense for you, and depending on how much you generate. I will tell you that vermicomposting can be a challenge, but the rewards are really good. The castings that come from vermicomposting are highly potent in nutrients, and also in the microbiology is different than the compost that you would get from like a large scale bacterial type based facility.
That's another great example, Frank. Thank you so much. At buildbackbetter.farm, we're just at the very beginning of the organization, so we're working through some things, but we're looking at the large scale farms, smaller farms, and asking them to do cover crops and leave roots in the ground all year long and use a diverse set of cover crops for the ecosystem and the environment. We're all in this together, including the ecosystem and the bugs and the bees and the birds. And composting is definitely part of that cycle that we want to get more people involved with. But even on a single little garden that you have at your house, you could, do your own little carbon sequestration idea. So we're trying to get those ideas out into the world, into individuals, communities. Corporations are a big part of it, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I would also just add, these commercial small scale composters that you see that you plug in, they tout that they make compost in 24 hours, 2 days, 3 days, whatever. You can't fool Mother Nature. You've got to go through the process. It has to be a natural heat. Most of those just macerate and desiccate. The end product looks brown, but it's not a finished compost by any means. So, however, though, it does reduce the weight and the volume. But when you do the math and the life cycle analysis of that, you're using the energy to make that particular unit and get it out, and then to use it and set it up in your kitchen, it may not be worth it. So I would just say stick with Mother Nature.
Wow, thank you guys both so much. I learned a lot just in this session. So thank you guys for your expertise, and everyone who's watching can reach out if they are interested. And I think with that, we can move over, hand the mic to Lena to talk about what's going on right now over in the field.
Thank you. I didn't get to listen into the live stream. I had a second screen, but it wasn't working. So, but I did catch up a bit of the last two discussions on compost and education, and that's what we've been discussing. So, if someone can share the Miro board, otherwise I'll just look at mine and kind of walk you through it. So we chose the farmer and the farmer's pain points, and we were going to look into the waste management operator as well, but ran out of time. But I have kind of combined both of them. And with the farmer, we have come down to a solution of educating the farmers as well, well, not just the farmers, but also the consumer and the retailers. And how can we how can we bring a certain level of education that is accessible to many, so that it's not just expensive courses, but would also act as a network or networking opportunity between these different stakeholders, because the consumers vote with their money. Farmers are, under many constraints and have to turn a profit, which is not easy. And waste is part of what they have to consider as a cost at the moment. But, with composting, it can be turned into a revenue. But how can you scale that up? And how can you, as a small farmer, access opportunities with your small amount of compost that larger farmers potentially have an advantage because of the scale? So we've had a lot of discussion. We've also discussed biomimicry, and is there another economic model for the farm waste or food waste that can be scaled up quickly? That's a good question, isn't it? And what else? Where it impacts the whole chain of material flows in the food waste. Education. Everybody needs to change and understand their impact, the impact on the Amazon, the nature. And what else? They are at the moment, they are kind of plotting the solutions onto the impact and effort chart. So hopefully finding the high impact but low effort solutions that can be taken away quickly and scaled up. So yeah, it's been a really interesting process, and we've had really great contributions from everybody taking part.
That looks great, Lena, like you've been very busy. Any comments, Charlie or Frank? I know the writing is a little small on the Miro. Do you have any questions for Lena or observations?
I just like that we're talking about farmers and composting right here, and we just had a discussion about it. So it's really part of the solution, but not the only solution, of course.
Yeah, I would just say, the nice thing about composting, it could be done at, all levels, either, the individual doing it or doing it on a large scale. A lot of it has to do with where the scrap is being generated, the food scrap, and then, where your end use markets are. In a lot of cases, the farm is in the rural area and the city is obviously in the urban area. So the movement of materials, is important, and transportation obviously is a big impact on the carbon footprint. So if you can minimize that, that makes a lot of sense. And where farmers can use it right on existing crops, it makes sense. And the other thing too is by producing an organic compost, certified organic compost, they can use that as part of their input for certified organic produce. So that's an extra benefit because usually you can get a higher price for that. And then vermicomposting, the finished product has a higher value for it. It's less volume but more potent material. So you can demand a higher. You can actually sell that by the pound, where a lot of times compost is sold by the cubic yard. So a little bit different than vermicomposting and just the bacterial-based compost. But the logistics of moving those materials has to be considered when you consider the overall life cycle analysis of how you set up the actual system.
Very interesting. Frank, I just have a quick question. The timescale for the vermicomposting compared to bacterial, is there much difference with the time to come up with the end compost?
Yeah, it's a slower process, obviously, unless you have, I've seen people scale up vermicomposting, to make it more of a a large scale, but the volume wise, you're talking probably maybe 1/10 of what you can produce on a large scale composting site, or even a medium scale composting site. So space is obviously kind of a benefit if you're doing vermicomposting. You can do it in small spaces, but again, you're not going to produce a lot of cubic yardage compared to traditional like windrow composting or aeratic static pile composting.
Great, thank you. Anything else, Charlie?
No, I just put another pitch in for cover crops and leaving roots in the ground and sequestering carbon and basically creating that whole cycle of the carbon cycle. And that's a real important solution for the climate. So.
Yes, and this is something, Charlie, I saw on your profile in LinkedIn. You said something that just resonated with me. It was, you said you bring the discussion of food, community, and climate to the dinner table. I just really like that. That you just really bring it home, you bring it into the everyday. I just think that's a lovely way to think about it, that we all have agency here. So thank you both very much. We'll bring you both back at the end once we've seen the final solutions of our sprinters. Hopefully they'll have time to finish before we get to that point. And I am just going to bring you through our third empathy. I've taken a slightly different tack on it. We all went about it our own way. And what I was going to make some slides, but I thought we're so zoomed out. We're always looking at slides. So I thought for this one, you can just sit back and listen. I'm not going to tell you what my item is as I'm speaking. Hopefully I'll give you enough information to figure out what I'm talking about. And if you don't, I haven't done it right. All right, so I've written a kind of story. And here is my story. I am aware of the age of this tree. I feel it drawing nutrients and water from the soil and energy from the sun. It's old. It has seen many, many summers. It's my turn. It's my summer. It's April, and I feel myself waking up, pushing. It's May now. Clusters of flowers form around me. I feel the cool nighttime air and the beating sun during the day, the heat. I'm growing. I feel the gentle rain. I hear the breeze and sometimes the children playing after school. The soil is dry and sandy here, and our farmer, like his father and grandfather before him, knows when to water. Summer passes. The flower petals fall away, leaving me in the center. I see those close to me have changed color from a leafy green to a bright yellow green. It's autumn now, and we are ready. I see them coming with sticks and ladders, nets and baskets. It's time. I hear them singing as they hit and shake the trees. I see my fellows fall into the nets. Those that don't are picked by hand. That's me. I feel the hand of a human. I'm gently dropped into a basket. We number more than 1,000 on my tree. A man can harvest just 2 or 3 trees a day. I'm hard now and taste bitter, really bitter, so they cure me the old-fashioned way. I'm washed in cold water every day for a week, then placed in brine. They make it the way their mother taught them, 1 kilogram of salt to 9 liters of water. There's enough salt in this water to make a fresh egg float. That's what their grandmother used to say. So we wait, submerged, for at least 5 months. I'm packaged and shipped across land and sea. Time passes. We sit on a shelf. One day, I see the light. A flash of silver. I'm cut in half and dropped onto something soft. Ah, blast of heat. It's so hot. Ah, I'm out. I hear people chatter and laugh, tell stories, the clink of wine glasses. They're going to love me. This is what I'm here for. Any moment now. Wait, what's this? The scrape of plates. Bang. The rubbish bin lid shuts. I see nothing. It's dark in here. What a waste. So, any ideas about what I was talking about?
I would say a cucumber.
No, not cucumber. It's a fruit on a tree. My tree is about 300 years old.
Olive.
And it's an alternate flowering tree, so that one year it's on and it has lots and lots of them and they're smaller, and the next year it has fewer produce and they're all bigger. You thought it was a mushroom. Oh dear, I need to go rewrite my story. I was talking about olives. Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. Yes, so the one thing I'd like to say about olives for people to remember is that they're really nutritious, full of calcium. They have over 30 antioxidants. It's not just the oil, but the life cycle of the olive is so amazing, and we just throw them away so easily. At the end, it was supposed to be on a pizza, but the people didn't finish their pizza, and my little olive ended up in the bin, which is very sad. The one thing about olives is that when they are still sealed in their packaging, most olives are still good for a year to 2 years after the best before date. So please don't throw your olives away. Just open them, smell them, taste them. And if they're good, please go and eat them. So next time you eat any fruit, you should really appreciate that journey of and the tradition and culture of our farmers who steward the land. I was going to do a potato because I'm Irish, but I thought the olive might be more universal. So I wonder, sorry, Mike, are we able to hear the final solutions from the design sprint?
Final solutions has a certain connotation in my part of the world, so we try to avoid that phrase. I think that we're still trying to keep the teams moving along, and I think that we are reaching the witching hour. I know that Frank will need to leave here in about a minute's time, so perhaps if we have an opportunity to get maybe final words from our participants.
Yeah, I just thank you for allowing me to attend, and I really like the mirror mapping and the sprint. It's a great way to get people involved, and in a non-biased way too. So I think it's great. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, I agree again with Frank. Let's just keep the carbon cycle in mind, and that's the ultimate circular economy.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, and thank you very much for today. It's been really inspiring also to hearing about the carbon cycle, in which I know not so much about from Charlie and Frank. And I really think it's great with the stories and the storytelling, and we need to tell more stories of the circular economy and how that will look like. And I think it's clear listening to Charlie and Frank that we need to be more connected with our supply chains, rather if that's electronics or food. And we need to create the business models around that. So thank you for today.
Thank you, Mr. E-Waste, our master E-Waste. Thank you very much.
Okay, then I think that was a wrap. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining today. Thanks, of course, to our presenters and Thanks, of course, to our panelists, and thanks for all of you for your questions. Apologies if we weren't able to get to all of your questions. We tried our best. It was quite clear that we did not want to be wasteful, and we tried to cram as much as we could into this hour. So if we weren't able to fit it in, we ask for your forgiveness. In any case, again, thank you very much. Maybe if I can go ahead and quickly make a plug for something that's going to be coming up here soon. And with that, let me get this one up and running. Share screen, Chrome tab. There we go. This is going to be our next event. This will be taking place on the 18th of June. And we will have Professor William Chen, who will be talking about the biosphere workbench. And he will actually show those things from the biosphere that we throw away that he uses and puts together in a very useful form. This is not going to be a talking live stream. It's going to be a doing live stream. That will be, again, on the 18th of June, a little bit earlier in the morning, 8 o'clock GMT, which would be 10 o'clock Central European time. Way too early for our friends in the United States. And actually, I think, Charlie, that's about the time you go to bed. So that might work out for you. Regardless, in any case, 18th of June, thanks again. Wish you a wonderful rest of the week, and let's stay wasteless.
Thank you, guys.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.